Welcome to this evening's meeting of the Education Scrutiny Committee on the 26th of November 2020. This meeting will be recorded and made available to view via the Council's website, except for discussions involving confidential or exempt items. Therefore, the images, audio of those individuals speaking will be publicly available to all via the recording on the Council website at www.caerphilly.gov.uk. There is a change to the agenda this evening, ladies and gentlemen. Item 7 now will be before item 6. Can I ask, have we received any apologies for absence?
Yes, Chair. We've had apologies from Councillor Gale, Councillor Oliver, Councillor Simmons, and also Mr. D. Davis.
Thank you. Can I just like to say that the whole committee would like to express their sincere condolences to Councillor Gaynor Oliver on the very sad loss of her husband, Roy. Thank you. If I could just read the declaration of interest. Councillors and officers are reminded of their personal responsibility to declare any personal and/or prejudicial interests in respect of any item of business on this agenda, in accordance with the Local Government Act 2000, the Council's Constitution, and the Code of Conduct for both councillors and officers. Are there any declarations, please? If anyone attending this meeting needs to declare both a personal and prejudicial interest during the meeting, they will need to leave and then rejoin the meeting. We'll have to do this by clicking on the hang up button on their control bar prior to the discussion of the associated agenda item, and committee services will contact that member after the item has been debated and invite them back to rejoin the meeting. Agenda item 3. To approve and sign the following minutes of the Education Scrutiny Committee held on the 22nd of September 2002. If we could go through the minutes for accuracy only.
That was 2020.
Oh, sorry, I do apologise. I've skipped 2 years. Yeah, September 2020. So just checking for accuracy. We have page 1. Page 2, page 3, page 4, page 5, page 6, and page 7. Are there any points of accuracy you'd like to have noted? Then can I have somebody to move the recommendation, please?
I'll move, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Roberts. And could I have a seconder, please?
I'll second that, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Havard. Right, members with voting rights are asked to respond for, against, or abstain with their names when their name is called out by the scrutiny officer, Mark Jakes.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Aldworth.
For.
Councillor Andrews.
For.
Councillor Bevan.
For.
Councillor Collis. For. Councillor Cuss.
For.
Councillor David.
For.
Councillor Farina Childs.
For.
Councillor Hardacre. Councillor Havard.
For.
Councillor James.
Abstain.
Councillor Miles.
For.
Councillor Parry.
For.
Councillor Roberts.
Obliged. For.
Martin Weston.
For.
Mrs. Millington.
Abstain.
And Mr. James.
Abstain.
Thank you. That's carried, Chair, with just 3 abstentions.
Thank you very much, Mark. Could I also ask whether we have any issues or matters referred to the committee in accordance with the call-in procedure?
No matters have been presented, Chair.
Thank you very much. If we could move on to the Education Scrutiny Committee's Forward Work Programme and hand back over to you, Mark.
Thank you very much, Chair. Members are asked to consider the Forward Work Programme alongside the Cabinet Work Programme and to suggest any changes. There's a couple of additions that I'll just point out now, if I may. It's suggested that Phase 2 21st Century Schools proposal is moved from the 11th of January to the 22nd of March, to your meeting in the 22nd of March. That's, as you can see in your Forward Work Programme, currently it's down for the 11th of January. It's proposed that this is moved to the 22nd of March, but there are additions to the 11th of January meeting. It's proposed that there's a budget monitoring period 7 report, library standards report, a youth forum priorities 2020-21 report, and also 2 information items, a financial plan 2021 and a grants report, both as information items for the 11th of January meeting. We've got proposed additions for the 22nd of February meeting. The EAS business plan 2021-22. It's proposed that comes to your committee on the 22nd of February. There's a performance report, a wellbeing objective performance report, which it's proposed comes to your committee also on the 22nd of February. On the 22nd of March, it is proposed that there's a Phase 1 21st Century Schools consultation, which is the statutory notice report. It's proposed that this comes to committee on the 2nd of March, and as an information report, the budget monitoring period 9 comes to committee in March as an information item. And last but not least, the 17th of May next year, it is proposed that we have a WESP update, a safeguarding report, and a support and challenge update is also, it's proposed, comes to committee as main agenda items, and that's the 17th of May. So if members are happy, I would like to seek approval to publish the Education Scrutiny Committee Forward Work Programme with the additions mentioned onto the Council's website. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Can I ask that members consider any changes and agree the final work programme prior to the publications? Could I have somebody to move the recommendation on 3.1, please?
Move.
Thank you. And a seconder, please.
Yeah, second, Teresa.
Thank you very much, Councillor Martin James. Can I just mention, we have mentioned and I have welcomed them already, but we have 2 new scrutiny members. They're parent governors holding statutory positions on this committee and are able to vote on the educational matters. They are Tracy Millington and Gerwyn James. Very warm welcome to you both.
Thank you for the welcome.
You're welcome. Can I also now hand to over?
Sorry, Chair, shall I take the vote on the Forward Work Programme?
Yes, please. Yes, sorry. Yes.
Thank you, Chair. So if I just quickly go through, we'll do this obviously as the Chair mentioned as a roll call. So Councillor Aldworth, this is on the Forward Work Programme.
4.
Councillor Andrews.
4.
Councillor Bevan.
4.
Councillor Collis.
Definitely 4.
Councillor Cuss.
4.
Councillor David.
4.
Councillor Farina Childs.
4.
Councillor Hardacre. Councillor Havard.
4.
Councillor James.
4.
Councillor Miles. Councillor Parry,
4,
Councillor Roberts,
Obliged. 4.
Martin Weston,
4,
Mrs T Millington,
4,
and Mr James.
4.
That's carried, Chair.
thank you very much. Could I ask for our cabinet member now, our cabinet education officer, Councillor Whiting, to respond here, please?
Sorry, to respond to.
Oh, sorry, I'm very sorry, Ross. If you could just introduce the report on.
Of course, yes. Sorry about that. Yeah, thank you, Chair. I wanted to introduce. I know that we've separated the two reports for separate discussion on this agenda, but I wanted to introduce them both together because they would have come together. So, if that's okay. So as you'll be aware, our intention tonight is to share with you the results of the consultation process on the Trinity Fields and Ysgol Gymraeg Cwmgwyddon proposals. We'll start tonight with Trinity Fields and then take the Cwmgwyddon as the final item on the agenda. This is the stage of the process that requires us to seek the views of the community and key stakeholders on the proposals and for the council to provide its response. Members will recall discussing and considering these proposals as part of the consultation during the previous scrutiny committee on the 22nd of September this year, where members agreed the recommendations by a majority of 12 in favour to 1 against on the Trinity Fields proposal and unanimously for the Cwmgwyddon proposal. Tonight's scrutiny session continues the process of shaping and refining what could be very exciting proposals prior to seeking Cabinet's approval to proceed to the next phase, which will be statutory notice. A report would, of course, come to scrutiny following the statutory notice period for further consideration. It has been great to see such a good response to the consultation exercise on Trinity Fields and Cwmgwyddon, with such a wide range of views being shared. I'd like to thank everybody who took part in this consultation, including this committee and officers for the work they've put in to analyse, consider and present the responses. In relation to the Trinity Fields proposal, it is good to welcome the speakers tonight to bring their respective positions to the fore. I'm very much looking forward to hearing from both, then listening to officers as they take us through the presentation on the consultation documents for Trinity Fields and then Cwmgwyddon later on in the evening. Thank you, members.
Thank you very much, Ross. This evening, we have had 2 requests from interested parties to speak to members. Firstly, Mr. Owen Francis, Director of Turley Planning Consultancy, who is representing Penalta Rugby Football Club and Save Ystrad Green Spaces Group. Can I hand over to Mr. Francis, please? Mr. Francis, you will have 5 minutes, and each speaker will have respectively 5 minutes to speak. Okay. Are you ready?
Yes, I am, yeah.
Thank you. Your 5 minutes begins now.
Good evening, Chair, members and officers. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. The members of Penalta Rugby Football Club and Save Ystrad Green Spaces Group are grateful that their voices have been heard at this stage. It is important to be very clear at the outset that our clients are not objecting to the principle of the planned investment at Trinity Fields. They are disappointed by the absence of genuine consultation and rigorous assessment of the development options and their impacts on the local community. Our clients are seeking a deferral of this important decision to address this failing and ensure the council is making a fully informed decision. We have serious and substantiated concerns on the decision-making process to date. These are illustrated clearly in the unbalanced findings in the consultation report. The concerns are detailed in full in our late representation circulated to members already. The options evaluation significantly underestimates the planning and development risks associated with the preferred option at Trinity Fields. The proposal underestimates the complexity of that option. It fails to properly address the likely risks for the council in pursuing a planning application for the option. There is no proper consideration of the following matters: the diverse use of the site by the local community, the nature and quantum of the mitigation needed to compensate for the loss of open playing field, the planning risks associated with Welsh Government guidance in Planning Policy Wales, and Caerphilly's own local development plan. The council's own evidence base that highlights an already significant shortage of outdoor sports and children's play and space provision, which is 13.5 acres back in 2008. The objection from Sport Wales is the relevant statutory consultee on this matter, which has been excluded from the report to date. The concerns result in a serious investment planning and development risks for the council. The proposed deferral will allow time to address these risks through robust scrutiny of the consultation responses and diverse users of the subject site, genuine input into the project and site evaluation by specialist departments at the council, correct consultation with statutory and non-statutory consultees, including local stakeholders, confirmation that the options evaluation exercises are adequately considered, the planning risks associated with each option, and to ensure the council can coordinate the proposals with its recently published Green Infrastructure Strategy. Collaboration between the relevant stakeholders will benefit the council and help de-risk the planning and development process. Collaboration will inform a robust decision-making process. Importantly, it could deliver significant public benefits to the local community. Officers and members will already be aware of the proposals at Soon Oaks Leisure Centre. However, in the form that these have been published on social media today, doesn't offer suitable mitigation for any loss of provision at Trinity Fields. It is not replacement provision and could harm football in the town. The Sports Wales objection already recognises this. The opportunity could be so much more. Effective and sustainable use of the council asset highlighted at Soon Oaks for potential closure could benefit the whole community. We could co-locate local sports clubs, rugby, football, cricket, hockey and netball. It could provide a high quality sports provision of changing facilities, pitches and social space. It could replace and enhance rugby provision, and it could reinvigorate the destination in the heart of the town. It could offer genuine regeneration. There is time now to assess this potential and agree suitable alternative provision and mitigation. It's time to manage planning and development risk, and it's time to deliver significant community benefits through proper replacement provision at Soon Oaks. Importantly, there's time to do all of that alongside investing in Trinity Fields and deliver the benefits that that scheme will provide. Our clients want to engage genuinely in the process by offering their time and their consultant team to support and maximise the opportunities of the development for the local community. The proposed deferral will allow time to do that and to manage the risks appropriately in the interest of the local community. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Francis. Secondly, tonight we have Mr. Mike Cook, Chair of Governors at Trinity Fields School in Ystrad Mynach. If I could hand over to you, Mr. Cook.
Yes, thank you.
Right, your 5 minutes will start now as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. As mentioned, I'm the Chair of Governors of Trinity Fields. I have been for the last 10 years. And initially, I was elected as a parent governor because my son attended the school. Just give you a brief recap. I know Mr. Elliott, our head teacher, has previously spoken to yourselves. Trinity Fields is a very successful school, as recognised by our Eston Inspection Report, where we achieved 5 excellence across all categories in the inspection. We put our pupils at the heart of everything that we do, and this was officially recognised with an Inclusion Quality Mark flagship school status. We've won many other awards for the outstanding work achieved there. Presently, we cover a really wide range of needs of pupils, complex needs, medical needs, also more challenging aspects. Together with the local authority, we developed satellite classes in mainstream schools to promote inclusion, and this again was recognised by Eston, and our head teacher was asked to prepare a paper for Eston to use as best practice. This is just to illustrate the standards being achieved by the school. The local authority built 2 additional classrooms at Trinity Fields and also converted a sensory garden for a nursery class. At present, we have no more space available at the main school site. We do use satellites at Comevo, St Kenneth, Derry and T-Isaac. Our numbers are driven because parents want the specialist provision that Trinity Fields can offer. Also, medical advances mean that more children these days survive with their problems. And the Estin report and our growing reputation make us very attractive option for pupils. As mentioned, I am a parent, and what I'd like to do is offer perhaps a little different perspective. When our children were born, they didn't have the best start in life. And when babies normally arrive in families, it's full of joy, and it's just a wonderful occasion. It is the same for children with special needs, but there is also a traumatic element. Families unwittingly enter a world of uncertainty and confusion. And immediately, when they know that their child has special needs, they start worrying about the future. How will the family cope? Who would look after my child if anything happened to me? And this is common across lots and lots of families. In this context, Trinity Fields is really a beacon of hope. The achievements secured by Trinity Fields are very reassuring to families. People and the public see very happy pupils. And again, this gives that reassurance to families. We are very fortunate to live in an authority who care greatly. And the authority have helped Trinity Fields thrive over the years. So we then are in a position to help the families of the most vulnerable pupils. Trinity Fields provides normality for pupils and families. The pupils are always welcomed and valued, educated and supported in a wonderful environment. The staff are absolutely outstanding, and they always offer a warm, friendly environment for pupils to learn. The pupils actually really want to be there. Nobody at all is left out. Everyone is encouraged. Pupils have opportunities to contribute to everything, from a work experience in our own cafe that we set up, to interviewing candidates for head teacher and staff appointments. All candidates must meet the school council as part of the process. Trinity Fields is a very happy school. Families feel valued and supported. They know they are not alone. The value of this is immense, and the reassurance at times of great worry and stress cannot be overstated. We already have good community links. Our hydrotherapy pool is used by an organisation called Water Babies and the local spondylitis group referred by GPs. We've got strong links to local.
I wonder, Mr. Cook, if you could wind up in the next 30 seconds or so.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah. Basically, what the extension means to us is that pupils have had their say in all of this. We open 6 days a week for 51 weeks of the year to support families. The facilities could be hired by families and carers, like hydrotherapy pool, soft play, because some pupils can't access public facilities. There are no hoists, or temperature of everything is perhaps not right. The accommodation is to meet the demands of more and more pupils, and it's reassuring for families to know that special education needs can be delivered locally and avoid the trauma of out-of-county placements. There is really a great need for this extension. The need to support our most vulnerable pupils cannot be overstated. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed there, Mr. Cook. Well, thank you both. If before we hear from officers, if I could ask members if they have any questions linked to the presentation before we move on to the main agenda. You may ask your questions now. Councillor James. Councillor James?
Just unmuted. Thank you, Chair. I'm just unmuted. My computer's playing up a little bit. Do you want, have I got to ask questions actually about the consultation or about what the
No, they've got to be directed to Mr. Francis or Mr. Cook for their presentations.
Right. Well, only quickly, I'll say yes. I think nobody in this community, because I represent Ystrad, actually says that they don't believe the good work that Trinity Fields does. That's the first thing. They are not against Trinity Fields. It's where it is proposed to go. And as Mr. Francis indicated, it is about the loss of green space, the last bit of green space we have in Ystrad. So, and that's been highlighted in a report to Cabinet, and it's been acknowledged. I believe if they want something for the 21st century, option 5 should have been looked at.
Could I ask Martin if you could direct the questions to our visitors, please, because we will have a chance to discuss this later.
Yes, okay. Well, to Mr. Cook, I've got a bit inside knowledge here. The one satellite area you mentioned, my wife was head off for 6 years. She's just retired. So I totally understand where you're coming from. But the thing is, I know for a fact that's a complex needs base. A lot of those children in that area should have been actually in Trinity anyway, when they, there anyway. But the thing is, they had little or no use of Trinity. For them to go swimming, they had to get on a bus and go to Merthyr, right? Because they couldn't use the pool in Trinity. So, like I said, what we need is a purpose-built area that will fit everybody in, because there are children in bases that actually their parents want them to go to Trinity. And in your statement, you haven't addressed the 18 to 25s and what provision you're going to put there for them, because as you understand, well, as you well know,
can I just, sorry, Martin, questions of the provision are with the 21st century schools, not with Mr. Cook.
Okay, well, what I'm just highlighting, that he's saying that it's used by everybody. It's not even used by some of the satellite people. So I'm just highlighting some points that he made. I won't say any more, Teresa. I'll come back on the consultation after.
Thank you very much then, Councillor James. Can I ask, are there any other questions before we move on? Well, before we move on.
Could I answer that, please? Could I answer that, Chair?
Yes, certainly, Mr. Cook.
Our satellite classes, in normal circumstances, do use Trinity Fields, and they're normally there 1 day a week, because the satellite classes are very much part of Trinity Fields. Obviously, with the recent pandemic, that has not been possible. But ordinarily, pupils from all satellites would spend at least 1 day in Trinity Fields every week.
Thank you very much. Thank you both for your presentations. Can I say that both of you are very welcome to stay and observe our meeting. However, you may not take any further part in the meeting. So I would ask, if you are to remain, could you put your microphones on mute, please? Thank you. Could I also call now Andrea West to give her presentation, please?
Certainly, thank you, Chair. Can I ask my assistant to display the presentation, please?
Members, for the course of this evening's meeting, I have the pleasure of being Andrea's beautiful assistant. So bear with me, I shall try my best to share my desktop now.
Whatever you did, it didn't work, Andrea.
Oh, sorry, there's a delay. Okay, I'm going to take members this evening through the consultation report. You may recall on the 22nd of September, I actually presented the consultation document to you and reassured you that we would come back with a consultation report at this stage. So this is the findings of the consultation process, which was undertaken from the 14th of September to the 26th of October. Next slide. I do apologise with Teams, there is a little bit of a delay. Okay, the consultation.
I think it's actually me, Andrea, rather than Teams.
I can't get the assistant. Okay, the consultation process. The consultation process is outlined to us as the Local Education Authority, following on from the School Standard and Framework Organisation Wales Act 2013, that requires Welsh ministers within the local government, within Welsh Assembly, to issue what we call a school organisation code. We've actually put a copy of the school organisation code there for members, should you wish to see it further on. The council has to follow the requirements of the school organisation code if they want to make a change to any school. Now, in relation to Trinity Fields, this falls under the regulated alteration to a special school. I believe that's section 44 of the Wales Act. The code sets out the policy context, general principles and factors that should be taken into account by those bringing forward proposals to reconfigure school provision and those responsible for determining proposals. I need to emphasise there is a statutory process in relation to planning. This isn't a planning application. The planning application is further on down the line, as I'll demonstrate as I go through the actual proposal itself, and that will then be led by Property Services. So where reference is being made tonight in relation to planning processes, can I reassure members that's a separate issue that will be dealt with further on down the line when we get to approval stage to produce the statutory notice. So all I'm doing at the moment is bringing forward views in relation to the consultation that took part in relation to both proposals. Can I have the next slide, please? So the consultation process, as I said, we have to we're governed and we have to adhere to legislation that's given to us by Welsh Assembly Government. It's statutory legislation. We have to formulate a proposal. So in the first instance, we have to give consideration to many issues such as demand, capacity, condition of buildings, etc. We then actually compile a report to Cabinet for approval to what we call proceed to an outline business case. An outline business case is a requirement that we have to, document as a requirement we have to submit to the Welsh Assembly. It's at approval stage then that we then submit a report to Cabinet to proceed to the consultation stage, which is what we actually did on the 22nd of September. We then have to publish a consultation document, and as I said, that ran between September and October. The consultation period lasted for 42 days. Following that, we are where we are tonight. We're then required to produce a consultation report. And the consultation report only has to summarise the responses of the consultees and advise consultees then, once it's been drawn up, of the publication. There isn't any requirement in the statutory process given to us by Welsh Government to actually consult with you as members of Scrutiny. But we do that to make sure that we're open and transparent and that everybody is aware of the process and the procedures that we've actually taken forward. So we're then required then to report back to Cabinet. We're actually, following tonight, we'll be taking the matter to Cabinet for approval on the 9th of December. The purpose of that meeting to Cabinet will actually be for them to agree for us to proceed to statutory notice. If on the 9th of December, Cabinet decide that we can proceed to statutory notice, we would then publish a statutory notice. The statutory notice has to run for 28 days. But if they give us approval on the 9th of December to get to that stage, they may not. They may decide to either ask for an alternative or actually agree to proceed. But if they do agree to statutory notice, as I said, it has to run for 28 days, 16 of which have to be school days. Now, as you can appreciate, the 9th of December doesn't give us 16 school days within that 28-day period because we have the Christmas holidays. So if we do have approval to proceed to statutory notice, we're looking to produce the statutory notice early January. We then following that, it's important to emphasise is at that stage the consultees can object or support. Up until now, all we've done is actually obtain views. We will then produce another report like we have done this evening, showing any objections and again advise any consultees of that publication. And again, we'll bring it back to yourselves as scrutiny members, and then the report then will go to Cabinet for approval for the final implementation. If we have that approval, we would then be required to submit a full business case to Welsh Government for approval for them to release the money for us to proceed with the 21st Century School proposal. Again, it's important to emphasise we are not going through a planning process here. The pre-planning and planning application process will run in parallel with step 9. So if we are given approval in relation to publishing the statutory notice, we will then proceed, not us, as I said, it's Property Services, to produce a pre-planning application and then a planning application from there. So even though you can see there's a lot of steps there that we have to undertake as part of the School Organisation Code, there's a lot of other steps that need to take place to address some issues perhaps that have been raised this evening, which wouldn't be necessary to apply at this stage. Next slide. Okay, what are we proposing to do? We are producing a consultation report. Sorry, go back as well. Consultation process. We must produce the consultation report to summarise all the views that have been raised by consultees. Now, consultees are actually stipulated and set for us in the School Organisation Code. So Welsh Government tell us who we have to consult with. As part of this process, and a matter of courtesy, we've actually consulted as well with the Penalta Rugby Club, because obviously it would impact on them, and also with Sports Wales. As I said, there's no requirement to do so, but we've done that as a matter of courtesy. We then respond back to these by means of clarification. So we need to then go back, clarify in relation to various concerns that are raised, and we try to do that within the consultation report. In the consultation report, we are, and this is the only person's response that we are required to actually publicise, is Estyn. So in the consultation report, we've actually put in there in full the response that we've received from Estyn, and we've actually provided our response in relation to that clarification. So Estyn's response, as I said, is in the document. It's a requirement for us to publish, again, in line with the School Organisation Code. As part of this as well, as part of this process, as part of the consultees, we've also taken on board the views of children, because the pupils in both the schools that we're going to be discussing this evening is very important to us as officers. And I think it's very important for members and Cabinet to see that we have fully engaged and we've taken on board their views throughout this process. Next slide, please. Okay, what are we proposing to do? I skipped ahead. We are proposing to expand Trinity Fields School and Resource Centre via a new building extension with outdoor play. And it's anticipated, obviously subject to planning applications and approval from Cabinet, that the completion date will be September 2023. At the moment, they accommodate 183 pupils, and we're proposing that the new facility will accommodate an additional 80 pupils, which will future-proof the school for years to come. We're also proposing to put in additional facilities such as hydrotherapy pool, play facilities, and also this facility will be available to colleagues in social services and health, and obviously the wider community. And as the Chair of Governors alluded to earlier in relation to Trinity Fields, it's nice to see. I mean, one of the comments we had back from one of the parents was that this facility will now allow her to have, in her words, a normal life. Because at the moment she isn't able to use facilities in local leisure centres because unfortunately there isn't a hoist and the water isn't warm enough for the children. So in her words, it'd be lovely because the child can now have a pool party, for example. So it's lovely to actually see when you have comments back and they actually bring it to life. I've gone through the dates in relation to the consultation period, but it's there for officers and members should you wish to see it. Next slide, please. This is a bird's eye view of the proposed plan in relation to Trinity Fields School. The dark sort of, I don't know, purpley brown colour is the existing footprint of the school. And then we're actually proposing then, as you can see, the yellow bit that comes down is where we're proposing to have offices, dual use rooms and facilities that will be available to health and social services. And then the blue, the deeper blue, which is like the turquoise blue, is going to be the hydrotherapy pool. And then the other legs leading off then are the proposed classrooms. And in the middle then, obviously, we're looking to have facilities that will enhance the learning of children in the school. The next slide will give you a different view of it. So this is then a different sort of diagram. It's looking at it from an angle. And I think it's important to emphasise here that when you actually look at this, it will allow a more efficient facility for transport provision. So the buses will be able to come into the school easier. There's a turning point at present. I don't know those if you've ever been down to Trinity. They're queuing out on, you know, past by the rugby club itself. And obviously that causes an issue. But this will allow us to have an easier sort of drop off and turning point. So that's just to give members a sort of view, different view in relation to the proposal. We've had in total through the consultation period for this proposal 1,048 responses. Interestingly, none of them actually came back in Welsh. All of them came back in English. There was various options for consultees to submit their views, either through the online proposal, through email or post. And we've actually broken down there, as you can see, the preferred option was the online format. We had 913 responses via the online survey, 109 via email and 26 via post. We've then actually broken it down then into the consultees and the percentage and the numbers of those returned. I think it's important to actually emphasise here that the large percentage of those returned were from others. So it wasn't in relation to the pupils, the staff, the parents. We had a high percentage of people come back from others, and we've actually broken that down on the next slide to actually show you that. So the next slide actually shows of the 1,048 responses we received, 56 stated they did not support the proposal, 43 said they did, some left no comments, and others didn't feel strongly one way or the other. I think it's important to actually emphasise to members here as well that of the 56% that said they didn't support the proposal, in the free text, there's a free body text, they actually said they did support the proposal and they recognised the needs of the school needed to be met, just not where we were proposing to actually build it. But I think it's important for members to actually be aware of that. And I will actually go through some of the comments received further on down in the report. Okay, this is actually breaking it down then. As I said, there was a large percentage of others who responded to the proposal. It was 98% of those who said they did not support the proposal who were actually not connected to the school in any way. So you can see they were elected members, they were parents, pupils, staff, school governors, etc., all in support. And then the ones that didn't support appeared, or they said they weren't connected to the school in any way. Next slide, please. Okay, as I mentioned earlier, we actually use the pupil voice in shaping and influencing decisions moving forward. They were involved from the very onset, and obviously they've played a part in this consultation process. So we've actually shown some photos then. It's very interesting. The actual middle photograph actually shows one of the pupils actually holding the consultation document. So you can actually see, you know, they were communicated with through whatever medium was appropriate for the children's needs. And the next slide, I think, will actually show members how, even though some children weren't able to communicate like you and I, there's other forms of communication and those children will also engage with. So this one actually shows it in more detail. Some of the children obviously are not able to communicate and they are able to use facilities such as retinal recognition. So if you have a look, the middle sort of drawing there, it actually shows like a green, yellow and red area. That's retinal recognition, and it identifies through the computer system how many times a child actually looks at that sort of area. So you can actually see there, that particular area, that children are excited about the prospect of having a new sensory garden. So I think it's really important as children are communicating. And what we've actually done then, we've actually used word cloud to generate the number of times children have actually used different words in their responses back to us. And as you can see, the big one coming out is school. And also, I think it's very important there to emphasise to members, these children have actually said rugby. And some of the responses come back, they actually wanted to know where the boys were going to be playing rugby. And Ian Elliott, the head teacher, was able to say that, you know, as an authority, we are working with the local rugby club to put in mitigation to ensure that these pupils, boys, adults, etc., will have facilities to actually use moving forward. But I think it's lovely to actually see that these children weren't only thinking about themselves and the facilities that they're going to have, but they were thinking about the wider community and the impact as well. And I think that's lovely to see that they were giving consideration to everybody. Next slide. Okay. As I said at the very beginning, Welsh Government requires us to summarise each of the issues raised by consultees. And I'm emphasising the word summarise. We're not required to analyse, we're not required to respond to each individual one. They just ask us to give a summary in relation to the areas. There are numerous areas, and what we try to do, we try to pull through general themes, areas of concern and areas of agreement, just to give you an overview of the responses that we've had. I think it's important to recognise here that when we actually take this report to Cabinet, all the responses received in the format they were received will be made available to Cabinet members for them to see. So it isn't a case of us manipulating or, you know, interpreting data the way we feel it's appropriate. This will be clear and transparent, and Cabinet members will have the option to view them should they so wish. This will assist Cabinet, This will assist Cabinet then in its decision-making process. So I think it's really, really important, you know, just to emphasise here that the report only summarises each of the issues raised. Okay, so as I said, the general themes that emerge from the consultation. Now, this is just a summary of them. It isn't all of them. It's just an overview for you to see. Majority of them acknowledge that the Trinity Field School, and as I said earlier, even those who initially said they weren't in support of it, still acknowledged that the current Trinity Field School and Resource Centre provides a high standard of support and specialist intervention. And the proposal supports the increasing demand for additional learning needs. It's important again to emphasise that that was recognised by 151 of those people who said they didn't support. Then there were concerns over the proposed use of the pitch for educational as opposed to recreational. One of the consultees was Sports Wales. Sports Wales actually said here, they actually made reference to the Planning Policy Wales, and they said at this stage they felt that we needed to give further clarification as to the mitigation. So obviously, as I've got in the document, we are working for mitigation, but what they actually said was that if we could demonstrate that we've actually taken forward an alternative provision to support this, or an alternative provision to provide an equivalent benefit is made available, then they will support the proposal when it gets to that stage. So this was their views at the moment, but as I said, at that stage, it wasn't any objections, it's only obtaining their views. Then there was concerns then over the impact on Penalty Rugby Club through loss of income and mitigation discussions, as I said, are taking place to date. There's loss of the green space and the impact on the local community. There's concerns over the loss of the green flag status at Estrad Park, and you can read them all. I won't go through them all in depth because I'm going to be discussing them in more detail on the next slides. Okay, so just to sort of clarify the areas that I've just mentioned, the loss of green space, they had 199 mentions. They looked at historical development. On some of the slides going forward, you'll actually see more information with regards to that, so I will actually address them. They looked at the impact on Estrad Park. They referred to the impact on the green flag status, the community impact and the rugby pitch. Other people mentioned there was 188 mentions then in relation to the expansion on other pitches on the site, building upwards and building on other locations. We had 105 mentions then in relation to flooding with regards to the current situation and the impact of the proposal. The Rugby Club, we had 185 mentions, again going back to the historical impact, the loss of income, the impact on players, use of pitches, the centre of excellence, mitigation options, soon oaks and walking routes. And the last one then, there were 17 mentions, was in relation to access and parking, increased traffic, transportation of pupils and out to catchment. And I will go into depth now in those areas. So the next slide, please. Okay, the loss of green space. I think it's very important to sort of look at these two sort of maps. We've had concerns raised in relation to the loss of green space. The one map is a map showing how Estrymynach looked, or that particular area looked in 2006, and the other one shows as it is now. And I think you can see that looking at that, it doesn't appear at this stage to be a significant loss of green space. I think it's very important to actually emphasise that the Centre of Sport and Excellence was actually built on a brownfield site. So the Centre of Sport and Excellence didn't take away any green spaces. And those, for clarification, a brownfield site is where buildings have actually been erected previously. So at that stage, there was no loss of green space. The new hospital, which I think is a fantastic facility for Estrymynach, was built on a combination of brownfield and greenfield sites. But I think, as you can see, there was a loss of green areas in relation to the hospital. But if you look at the opposite in 2020, then we have actually compensated for the Centre of Excellence with the addition of 2 additional 3G pitches. So obviously, I just wanted to demonstrate there and clarify for members in relation to some of the concerns that were actually raised. The next one then is the loss of green space again. Just to bring members' attention, if the proposal to build on Trinity 1 goes ahead, that only actually equals 6% of the entire park of Estrymynach. That's a very, very small percentage. And people had concerns that if that was removed, they would lose the green flag status. And I think it's really important to say that we've actually spoke to the relevant departments in relation to this. And we have had confirmation that by losing that 6%, it would have no impact on the green flag status. It's then said that it's used for recreational facilities such as dog walking, play, picnics, socialising. But it's important to emphasise that that facility will be available because it's only a very small percentage of the park itself that we're proposing to use at this stage. And again, it's important to mention that Trinity 1 is one of 5 pay-to-use sports pitches in the park, because the park actually recognises the 2 pitches that are contained within the Centre of Excellence. And if you can see, we've actually sort of shown you the drawing on Estrymynach Park, which actually shows the green flag status, and it does incorporate the 2 fields within the Centre of Excellence. As an authority as well, we've also invested significantly in implementing all-weather pitches within our school sites. We've actually invested in quite a large number of facilities, as you can see, in addition to the Sport in Excellence. And they are within 5 miles radius of Estrymynach and Trinity 1 in connection. And I think it's important to say, as an authority, we've got more 3G facilities now than most other authorities in Wales. So I think that is an achievement that we've actually done moving forward. The next one then was an alternative location for the school. Trinity 2 was suggested as an alternative. Now, it's interesting to say Trinity 2 actually falls within the boundaries of Estrymynach Park. So again, where people are arguing with regards to the loss of green space, if we were to take on board that proposal, obviously that would impact on the green space and take away an area of the park. One of the obstacles in relation to using that pitch, there's a number of them, but the first one is it doesn't adjoin the school itself. So obviously, if we were looking to do that one, we'd have to get round Trinity 1 and find a way of connecting to the school, which it doesn't lend itself ideally to the situation. And then also, Trinity 2 is controlled and it's identified in the local development plan. Now, Trinity 1 isn't, but Trinity 2 is. And also, the existing school doesn't support, the way it's been designed, doesn't lend itself to a second floor. So if we were to look at one of the proposals which said you should go up as opposed to go out, that wouldn't lend itself to that proposal, because unfortunately it would mean we'd have to knock the whole building down and start from scratch, because it wouldn't be able to support in the current structure that it has. And unfortunately, that would be very disruptive to the pupils, most vulnerable pupils in the authority from that perspective. One, we wouldn't have anywhere to accommodate them, and two, it would be a major disruption for them moving forward. Next slide, please. Then another concern then was in relation to flooding. It's important to recognise that Trinity 1, the proposed site, and Trinity 2 are within Zone B on the current Natural Resources Wales Development Advice Maps for the main river flooding. However, Trinity 1 is a low risk flooding from surface water, but Trinity 2 is a high risk. So I think it's very important, again, in relation to the flooding aspects, it also backs up our concerns as to why Trinity 2 wouldn't be an option for us to build on. The council upgraded the pitch drainage in relation to this area in 2013. When the proposed extension goes ahead, it will be designed with the current Wales Government's Sustainable Drainage Statutory Guidance sets, and we'd also have to take into account SABs, which is a requirement in relation to drainage as well. So we're at a stage at the moment, as I said at the very beginning, this is only a proposal. There's a lot of things that would have to be explored before the actual building goes ahead. So I think it's very important, as I said, at this stage, it's nothing to do with planning or flooding, etc. This is a proposal we're looking to take forward. Next slide, please. The Rugby Club. As I mentioned earlier, there wasn't a requirement under the statutory process to consult with the club. However, we felt it was appropriate and to work together to actually allow the proposal to go ahead. We actually used them as part of the consultee process. And also, we have been engaging with the club in discussions since November 2019. There has been numerous meetings with them going forward. Over the last 3 years, the usage of Trinity Fields has equated to 10% of the recorded paid usage. It's important to say that obviously this is paid usage, and it's the number of times that the authorities actually received money in relation to the usage of those pitches. There's a significant investment into the state-of-the-art all-weather provision in the area, which can be utilised, and I understand it is utilised by Penarta Rugby Club and the wider community. So the pitches, the 3G pitches that I made reference to earlier, are currently used by Penarta Rugby Club. I'm aware, for example, the new one in Blackwood, Penarta actually has a slot there for usage as well. Where we're actually proposing through the mitigation to use, so we're proposing that we move the Trinity 1 provision from where it is currently to the Soon Oak Centre, and that is actually 0.5 miles from the club site. And the council has been working with the club to look at mitigation to allow for the loss of this pitch. To assist Cabinet in the decision-making process, the following information is provided by means of clarification for supporting reasons. So traffic, there was, as a highway authority, we have a duty to manage the road network. So again, that would be a planning stage. They would have to look at the transport provision. We'd also have to ensure that existing learners travel arrangements. So for example, the majority of children who attend Trinity Fields School are bused there, and the needs are such that the learner travel document from Welsh Government says that children with special education needs require transport. It's important to also emphasise that 98% of the children actually live in the catchment area of the school, and the catchment area of the school actually serves the whole authority. The proposal is then subject, as I mentioned earlier, to a full planning application process, and that will then bring in a wide range of consultees, including people like Highways Department, in order that we can address any traffic concerns moving forward. Full responses in relation to this can be found in the consultation report. Mitigation options. I've mentioned numerous times during this presentation that the council has been working with the club and other stakeholders to explore physical measures to mitigate the loss of Trinity 1. What we're actually proposing to do is, in relation to Trinity 2, fenced as is, and give consideration to adding training lights. So we're going to be enhancing that facility. Trinity 3 will be marked out as a pitch and posts will be erected. Again, enhancement to Trinity 3. An improved senior pitch is created at Soon Oaks, which, as I said, is 0.5 miles away from the clubhouse, with spectator area, barriers and enhanced training lighting, together with one additional pitch. So we're not only mitigating for the loss of the current pitch, we're actually adding an additional pitch into the facility. This also, just need to bear in mind that this would also be subject to full Cabinet approval. Following that, if we get approval from Cabinet to proceed with this mitigation, we would look to make sure that those fields could be progressed in fields in trust. So they'd have protection, giving the club assurance that those pitches would be retained. Right, this gives you a sort of clearer view in relation to the Soon Oaks site. So the picture on, I'm trying to my left, I don't know how you would see it, but it's on my left, actually shows the current state of play. So you've got the APT, you've got some tennis courts, and then you've got the pitch area. And what we're proposing on the right then is to actually, as I said, provide a full-size pitch for senior with another pitch alongside. So there will be 2 pitches put on this facility, which is 0.5 miles away from the current site. Next slide. And then in relation to the areas of wide disagreement, I think it's important to give a balanced argument in relation to this. A lot of people, there's 227 people actually recognise that there is growing demand for the school. They recognise that the projections that we've calculated going forward are there and we need to enhance the school. They recognise that the specialist intervention is required. So as I said, working with colleagues from social services and health to provide a very holistic, sort of all-round approach in providing provision, not only for the children who are currently within Trinity Field School, but the wider community and those children's needs. And also the standards of support, I think, is to build, as the Chair of Governors mentioned earlier, there has been an inspection carried out on the school and they've had 5 excellence. And I think it's important here to recognise that we need to build on that excellence. It's building on the expertise and making sure that, the relevant support is in place. Additional facilities, 69 people mentioned the need for more facilities. Again, as I mentioned earlier, the hydrotherapy pool, soft play is going to allow not only for the provision for the children in the school, but also the wider community moving forward. And again, people recognise the need for multi-services on site. Community usage, again, people have mentioned they'll have access to the facility for families and they'll have wider usage within the Estrymynach area and wider. So we're not only looking at with the club to put a mitigation in to enhance the facilities that the club currently have, we're also looking to for wider community use for usage within the area of Estrymynach. I think it's important then, as I said at the very beginning, there are a number of processes that we need to follow. So what I've actually done here, I've given an indicative time scale in relation to the Band B proposals. So as you can see, we're taking you through in blocks. Now, this is only an indication of proposed time, but it gives you an indication of each stage moving forward until the school, if it's given the go-ahead, opens in September 2023. Next slide, please. So members, what was the purpose of tonight? Members are asked to consider the information within the consultation report. Members are asked to endorse the recommendations to Cabinet to proceed to statutory notice in relation to the proposal. I think, again, it's important before I end, just to reiterate what I've said previously, this is only one stage of a larger process. This was highlighted at the beginning of the presentation. I think I can't emphasise enough that there are other processes that would need to go hand in glove with us as we take this forward. I think Councillor Whiting actually alluded to it at the very beginning as well. This actually came to members in September 22nd of September 2020, and at that time there was 12 people voted in favour of the proposal, 1 against and 1 abstained. So members are reminded at this stage the responses provided by consultees are considered as views only. This isn't an objection stage. The objection stage will actually take place if we proceed to statutory notice in January. And that's my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much indeed, Andrea. Right, I do have a few questions regarding this. The first two questions actually come from Councillor Brenda Miles.
Thank you, Chair. I've got three now, if I may sneak another one in as well. But my questions are only quick, and I'm sure you'll answer them fairly easily. The first question was going back to the consultation process, and I noticed that we didn't have any responses in the Welsh language, and I wondered if you could just confirm whether you feel the consultation process did actually give equal access to Welsh and English speakers, so the opportunity was there for both languages.
Yes, I can confirm that. There was actually a Welsh language and equality impact assessment done as well, in line with the consultation reports or the consultation documents. And all the documents were actually published in both Welsh and English, and people were given the equal opportunity when they were wrote out to. Everybody that was part of the consultation process received the format in both English and Welsh, so there was an option given. Okay.
That's great. Thanks very much. That's reassuring. My second question again is about the consultation process, because we did have a huge number of people come through in the other category. And I wonder, with hindsight, do you think it would have been helpful if at an early stage we'd identified other interested parties so that we could have had a clearer picture of how people were dividing up within that? I think a couple come out quite clearly, which is the users of the sport facility was one interest group, local residents was another one. I don't know if there were other interest groups where we could have perhaps identified their particular thoughts separately, so we could have interrogated that other category a bit better.
As I said, we aren't required to do that as part of this school organisation code. We gave the courtesy to the club and Sports Wales in relation to giving them the option to provide views. There was a facility within the document, or the consultees response form, for them to say if they wish to identify in what capacity they were responding, but the majority of them chose to say either rugby player or other.
Okay. And my last quick question. I was looking on page 29, where you give a breakdown of bookings for the three sports fields, and I noticed that Trinity 3 didn't have any bookings at all in the last 3 years. Is that because the quality of the pitch is not great, or is there some other explanation for no bookings at all?
I can't comment in relation to the bookings. I can only really provide information in relation to what Parks advised us. Obviously, the bookings are made through Park Services, and they are the numbers that we were given in relation to the paid usage of each individual. Whether it was used and we weren't aware of it, I can't comment in relation to that, unfortunately.
Yeah, but it should have been booked. It wasn't a pitch that could be.
Yes, it's available for booking, but for some reason it wasn't.
Yeah.
It wasn't. They had no indication that we'd had any bookings through the paid usage system.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you.
We have three more members wanting to ask questions. We take Councillor Farina Childs next, then Councillor Martin James, and then Councillor John Roberts.
Thank you, Teresa. Good evening, Andrea. Thank you very much, firstly, for the presentation. Very informative, as usual. And I will be supporting this recommendation this evening, as I did when it came to scrutiny last time. I have two questions, and you may have inadvertently already answered these, unfortunately, but I will ask them anyway, if that's okay. The first one is under stakeholder engagement. It says consultees would advise of the proposed and availability of the consultation document. But I noticed the local health board wasn't consulted, which I felt was rather a shame, really, because in relation to occupational therapists and physios, they may have identified additional provision for the school.
Health were actually engaged prior to the consultation document being produced. So they were people who worked with us along with social services to identify the requirements that are actually incorporated into the document. So it wasn't necessary for them to be part of the consultee process, because they were actually part of the board that looked at the needs prior to the document being produced.
Oh, that's Lovely. Oh, thank you, Andrea. And the second question, as we're all aware, as a local authority, we've actually signed up to be carbon neutral by 2030. And I was just wondering if there was any plans in place to incorporate any green infrastructure in relation to energy savings, but that's obviously been a planning question, I suppose.
Yeah, is Mark Williams available to answer?
Yeah, yes, I'm here, Chair. Yeah, as Andrea quite rightly said, it's a planning stage consideration that, and we haven't got into the detailed design. But I would expect it to have a PV on the roof and vehicle charging points. But that's some way in the future before we start thinking about the detail of that.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Mark. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Teresa.
You're welcome. Councillor Martin James.
Well, thank you, Chair. A couple of little points, that's all. That I've got a couple of questions. You say about the consultation process, you don't have to engage Sports Wales or the Rugby Club, but surely the whole idea of consultation is for members here to make informed opinions when they vote. So as decision makers, people must have all the information in front of them of the feeling of community and the feeling of everyone else. And as I go back to say, nobody has any problems with Trinity Field. It's option 5. One of the questions, well, I'll come to that. What we haven't addressed here, and you've addressed it very well for the Trinity Fields, well-being and obesity is a big thing within our communities. And it was one of the things that came to council on as performance manager that we weren't actually managing very well. Now, if you take a provision away, which you are doing, then you know, how does that impact? But you know, that hasn't never been examined in the document about well-being. There's nothing in there about people's well-being. But my questions are, you were thinking of putting social services, which I don't know if everybody is aware of it. You want to put the Enniglin Children's Centre in there. That's what some of it's about. What impact is that? Where the staff recruiting? Are the staff relocating from? Which I think I've just answered. And what impact on its services will it have? What ratio of the proposed extension will be required to accommodate and relocate these people? That's the first question. Why haven't you looked at alternative sites? To me, this seems a little bit predetermined because you haven't looked at any other option site. So if you have, can you tell me? In the proposal, 21st century education funding is mentioned. How does that align with social services funding? I got 2 other questions. I don't know if anybody wants to answer those first. And if I can just answer to Councillor Miles, the surface Trinity 2 is unplayable. It floods. It can't be used. That's why there's no bookings on there. In fact, you know, I can answer your question there. It's not playable. So could I have those 2 questions first, Chair? And then I got 2 other questions, please, to ask.
May I ask Joe Williams to answer in relation to the Enniglin question first, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. In relation to the Enniglin question, I think the important thing to note is when we started discussions about moving the Children's Centre functions over 4 years ago, a lot has changed in terms of services that are delivered and how they're delivered. So we can't actually say who is going to be relocated. It's going to be working together with our partners in health to see how we can provide services out of the multi-therapy rooms that are there. So we can't give you an actual definitive number.
Is that the answer?
Can I also say, Councillor James, in relation to how you said about Welsh Government being concerned over how we'd actually spend the money. The aim of the 21st Century Schools and Colleges programme, Band B, is to actually provide educational and community facilities. And one of the things the Welsh Government like to see is where people work together to provide a facility. So I think, you know, we've actually shown within our business case to them, we are looking to use this proposal going forward, and that has been supported because it actually supports their aims as showing community usage. So as I said, it's not just about the school, it's about the wider community. And also in relation to your other question, where you about children, obesity, etc. We're not taking away a proposal. As I said numerous times throughout the presentation, we are actually looking to put in mitigation with the club, not only to provide like-for-like facilities with enhanced provision on site, but also an additional field. So I think in relation to your first question about obesity, etc., we are looking to continue with our level of provision within the Estrymynnoch area.
Oh, right, I'm not going to go any further with that because this is at an early stage and it can be taken further. But the other, you know, can you actually clarify to me what community use is? Because as I explained earlier, when my wife was involved, she couldn't even get a satellite school in there. Can you tell me what use it will be, and what do you call community? Because the Centre of Excellence was supposed to be in community. It is not really, you know, that they can use a gymnasium there. It's very, very expensive for anybody to go in there to use. That's why you only see Penalta seniors. It would be too expensive for mini and junior sides. You were saying you were on about taking away and mitigating things by doing things in Sue Noakes, by putting 2 rugby pitches there. What happens when the children that play football there now are displaced from there? Those children are displaced from there. So where do those children go to play football if you hand that all over to the rugby? This is about loss of green space, not just a rugby field. It's a loss that can't be replaced. That green space, once it's gone forever. And like I said, you know, so this is why it's got to be fought for, because and it's nothing about the school. I honestly tell you, I would support it if you looked at another option, but you know, it doesn't seem this is going that way anyway. So could you tell me where the other people that are going to be displaced will go?
Yes, certainly. There's 2 areas there I think you covered, Councillor James. One is in relation to the community usage of children who are currently in bases and satellite provision, and the other is in relation to the usage of the Centre of Excellence. So if I can ask Jared Lockyer to speak in relation to the Centre of Excellence.
Yeah, thank you, Andrea. Evening all. Just picking up, Councillor James, on your point in relation to the Centre of Excellence. You know, as I know you're aware, the community use is in. We've got daytime tenants is in community use from Coleg y Cymoedd, our partners at the college, and obviously Gwent Dragons Rugby. And daytime partners are really important because at the end, if you haven't got a daytime partner that's bringing revenue in, it won't be sustainable in the long term. And then from the evening onwards, 5 p.m. onwards, it is community use, and it is only community clubs that are using it. So your likes of your football clubs, your local, your Bargoeds, your Penaltas, your Caerphillys, etc. They are community clubs. They're in the heart of our community in Caerphilly County Borough, and we're quite stringent. We don't want anybody really outside of the borough coming in because, again, we're making sure that it is for our local community. So that is, you know, that isn't correct, Councillor James, that it is community clubs using it. In relation to the gym is available for booking, local rugby clubs and football, but mainly rugby, because it is a high performance gym. It is, I will put it, for strong men and women to train. So it is available to book. Granted, some clubs choose not to, and again, it's a decision for them. But again, Penalta, as an example, like a number of other rugby clubs, have booked it and do pay and use the gymnasium at the moment. So that, you know, that is a total community use facility. So hopefully that clarifies for members about the usage at the Centre of Excellence, but also the importance of other partners, like I made reference to, of the college and the Dragons, who make that facility become more sustainable because in giving us that daytime use, you know, for the wider public. In terms of the point you made about the pitches, you know, you'll see in the illustration that it says around dual pitches. So again, there are children, we believe, playing football there. It says about a dual pitch, so we can make it rugby and football, the second pitch that's in the illustration, and that can support both football and rugby, which, as you rightly said, will really enhance the offer that's going on at the moment there, which at the Suno Centre, we've got hockey, we've got rugby, we've got football, we've got fitness, we've got netball, which it is really a great sporting hub, and this is going to enhance it by having, you know, a greater range of opportunities for people of all ages and abilities to utilise all these sports. So quite exciting from my point of view. And just to clarify, my point from sport has been involved is to make sure that we're working and supporting the club. We value what they do in the community, and to be fair to you as members and education, we're working together to show that we want to make sure we can safeguard the future of sport by providing a facility that really is, you know, fit for purpose. And we're not just saying that pitch needs to go and not providing any replacement. So it's really important to show that we're working together, and from my role, really value the role that club plays in this community. Thank you. Can I just come back in there, Chair, quickly?
If you quickly then, Martin, yes.
Well, the thing is, you know, this meeting will be screened anyway. And I hope the members that are going to see this will come along to Jared and actually pick him up on some of the things he said, because some of the things there are not happening. He hasn't told you that the booking system in the Centre of Excellence is actually implemented by the WRU, that the higher you are in the status of rugby, then it comes down. So unfortunately, if you pay for Ponton Fry's fifths, if there was one, you probably get no use of that facility at all. And you've only got to look at the times that Penalty have got their bookings, because the other bigger clubs like Bedworth, Bargoed, all those clubs that he mentioned, all those clubs in an higher region, or the Dragons, have priority. Thank you. That's all I got to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. Did you want to come back on that,
Yeah,
Jared?
just to clarify, and Councillor James is right in terms of criteria, and the criteria we apply across all our sites, including Blackwood and the new ones that we've just brought online, because it's important we've got a criteria to make sure we can support the clubs, obviously in the criteria and the pathway. So we work with the Football Trust and the Welsh Rugby Union, as Councillor James has said, to make sure that those clubs that have got a bigger pathway, i.e. if you've got 100 children as opposed to a club with 20, the ones with more would get priority over the next club. So again, that's the criteria that the Cabinet approved in 2014, and we currently do apply. So hopefully that clarifies Councillor James's his point there.
Thank you. Can I have Councillor John Roberts now's question?
Chair, can I say that Sarah Ellis needs to address some issues from Councillor James as well?
Oh, right, okay. Yes, if Sarah Ellis would like to come on first.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Andrea. Just wanted to pick up on a couple of points that Councillor James mentioned earlier on in the meeting, just after Mr. Cook was speaking. So there was a question around should children in complex needs bases have been in Trinity Fields, and children wanting to be in Trinity Fields as opposed to in bases elsewhere. Just wanted to reinforce that, of course, the council always complies with current legislation and is working towards complying with new legislation in relation to the ALN Act. And that involves keeping children at the centre of everything that we do and working with parents in order to plan provision for children. Provision is identified on the basis of robust assessment, again with children and parents at the centre of that process, and children are not placed without consultation with parents. We've had, just to confirm, we've had no tribunals in the local authority in relation to placements around specialist provision or tribunals, and I think that goes to show the amount of work that is done in making sure that when we're identifying need and provision, that is done in a robust way. Thank you. I think that probably answers Mr. James's comments.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Councillor John Roberts, do you wish to still speak?
Hello. Thank you. I gather you can hear me. You could probably see me now as well. There's my ugly little face on the screen. My hair's all grey. Once upon a wish ago, when my hair was black, I used to live in Ystrad. And there was the Cherry, as the local people called the school then. And many adventures after that. There's been Caer Drindod. We all know the story of Trinity Fields. It's been a successful story. It's been a story that we've all been glad about and celebrated. Good. I got a problem tonight. I voted in favour in September for the proposal. I'll probably vote the same way tonight as well, but I have a problem. I'm one of these councillors. I know many of us do it, some don't. I sit on 2 scrutinies. I sit on education scrutiny, so I'm as aware as I can be, I believe, about our story in education in Caerphilly County Borough. And not so long ago, I went on environmental scrutiny as well. October the 1st, environmental scrutiny endorsed a new policy that was taken to Cabinet that I believe was discussed yesterday, and that's the Caerphilly Infrastructure Strategy Green Plan. So whilst I fully support Trinity Fields, I'm also aware of the issue that's been brought up regarding, it's not just green spaces, isn't it? It's a little bit more than that. And we one chance we're going to get at this from both sides. You know, if it sounds as if we've nailed it from the Trinity, from Caer Drindod side. Sounds okay. But one chance we're going to get at this, one chance. And we've got to try and nail it from the other side as well. And I know that's hard. I know that's hard. And yes, local groups do use it. I suspect the Councillor James was talking about local though. You know, there's a little bit of a difference. I suppose he was talking about local. But one chance we're going to get at this. October the 1st, environmental scrutiny endorsed, because Caerphilly County Borough, before that really, didn't have an infrastructure green plan as such, which is why they went out to specialist consultants. And it was endorsed on October the 1st, taken to Cabinet, which I believe they discussed yesterday. So regarding this proposal, and I don't want to be a killjoy, and I know we've heard a lot tonight, and I know it's not planning, and I know some of the issues have been addressed, but my only thing is, to what extent does this proposal meet the requirements of the new Caerphilly infrastructure strategy, given the story of Ystrad Mynach in previous years? That's the only thing. Don't have to answer it now if you don't want to, but we need to bear that in mind when this goes forward. Maybe, to what extent does this proposal meet the requirements of the new Caerphilly infrastructure strategy? Diolch yn fawr.
Does an officer wish to come back to Councillor John Roberts?
Well, Chair, if I may, just to suggest I support the comments that Councillor Roberts has made. He makes very valid points, and as this story develops, we'll be sure to give him some additional narrative to that end. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ed.
Councillor Derek Havard.
Thank you, Chair. Got 2 points, and I think a lot of this has been answered, but this has been raised by the Caerphilly Governors Association. Questions on 2 things. First of all, on the green spaces, I couldn't find the Sports Wales recommendation or whatever it was. But I got to say that, like John has just said now, and Martin, green space is vital, and it's not always for organised sport. There's a lot of casual knockabouts that boys and girls do to sort of impromptu sport that they may decide one afternoon to have a game and organise it themselves. So there must be space for that as well as the organised sport. And I think that, when we've got a centre of excellence, and it's great, it's fine. But you're quite right. if the facility isn't there for this sort of casual knockabout games for kids, then there's something seriously missing from the village. The other point I wanted to make, which is more important perhaps, is that there's a lot of concern about the sustainability of the provision that school will make with regard to the ongoing ALN development. Things have changed in ALN, and I noticed that Sarah said that, it wasn't Sarah, sorry, somebody said that they weren't sure of how many of pupils coming from Enniglyn and the satellites. There was no sort of definite, didn't appear to be a definite plan, because it's also dependent on needs, and needs can change and all sorts of things. But they are worried that there will be enough, that the school will be sustainable into the long term with regard to the new ALN, because the numbers look a little bit dodgy. Now, I'd like an answer on that. I don't want a definite answer, and congratulations to Andrea and the team for putting this forward, because it sounded like Andrea was going to go on forever. Never mind, Andrea, that's great. There's no problem with that. But I would, you know, is it possible that somebody could give us more reassurance about the sustainability as we go forward on this? And also, well, yeah, well, okay. Thank you, Chair. I'll leave it at that. It's just, okay. I know it's, my question is a bit bitty. I appreciate that, but I'm concerned about the ongoing sustainability. Thank you.
Andrea West.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Harvard, just to sort of reiterate what I said at the very beginning, this proposal is only to remove 6% of the park. There is still 4 other pitches, albeit 2 of them are the Centre of Excellence pitches, and there's still the park facility itself. And we'll also look into enhanced facilities in Soon Oaks. So we're not removing provision within the area, we're actually enhancing it. And I'd like to ask Sarah Ellis to come forward then with regards to the questions regarding SRBs.
Thank you, Andrea. So in terms of your current question around sustainability and satellite classes, we've been able to look at current data, previous data, and the future data that we hold in order to be able to make some projections around the numbers that we would need going forward. In terms of satellite classes, you'll all be very aware of the developments around hub and spoke and how we've continued to focus on improving those. Mike made reference to that also in his presentation earlier on. So, of course, that's about working in partnership with schools and continuing to drive forward that initiative around ensuring that we're really enhancing the opportunities for inclusion for young people from Trinity Fields into our satellite bases. And there's also, of course, been reference this evening to the work that happens between Trinity Fields and our specialist resource bases and the increasingly excellent relationship, again, identified within the Estin report. So we are absolutely confident in continuing to develop our model in that way in terms of hub and spoke, and continuing to support the developments around satellite provision linked to Trinity Fields.
Thank you very much,
Sarah. Thank you very much, all of you.
I wonder if I can just make a suggestion. Andrea, I wonder if we could ask the officers to look at a feasibility of using the current school fields, the playing fields of Ystrad Primary and Bro Allta. Perhaps these could provide provision for the community and have the extra benefits. I mean, I know John Roberts was saying that, Councillor John Roberts was saying that about meeting the requirement, but perhaps this could go a long way to helping that. It could have benefits for not only the rugby club, but also for the 2 schools.
Mark Williams able to comment in relation to that, please?
Only that happy to look at options. We were looking at the Google Earth image of it today, and you're right. Ystrad Primary has got a grassed area, not far actually from Trinity Fields. It's not large enough for a full-size rugby pitch, but it wouldn't be that difficult to put posts on it. So it is something we can look at.
Is it perhaps something for a junior, or as you know?
Yeah.
Right. Thank you. Thank you for.
Yeah, it only came up today, but yeah, we're happy to look at it. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Can I ask Gedwin James now?
Yeah. Sorry about that. Just with the possibility loss of Trinity 1, you spoke about enhancements on Soon-Oaks fields as well. How does that work with the sport and active recreation strategy that was adopted by the council about 18 months ago?
Can Jared respond, please?
Yeah, thanks, Andrea. Yeah, in terms of the sport and active recreation strategy, like we've outlined within the strategy, it's currently we've got the leisure centre and the school, and while the school remains to be there, that won't change. When or if that's the right word, if anything changes in terms of the educational establishment there, then that would be looked at. But I mean, in terms of the strategy, our strategy is quite clear. It's around, we can't do everything. We can't deliver, every bit of sport and activity, and we want to work with partners. So I think the answer to that is about when we get to that space, if anything does change with the educational establishment, then obviously Soon-Oaks Leisure Centre, if that's what your question is, would naturally be looked at that time, and look at what the best option is in terms of moving that forward. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure there wasn't going to be another loss on the Soon-Oaks side later on in development. And obviously, as you can say, you can't tell what's going to happen with the school there. It's impossible to answer any further on that now. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sue Richards?
Just to add to that, Chair, is that you note from Andrea's presentation that we are looking at, if the proposal does progress, is looking at the feasibility of fields on trust status for the remaining pitches. So in answer to James's question, we would be looking to protect the remaining pitches, obviously subject to cabinet agreement.
Thank you, Sue. Councillor Martin James?
Just quickly, just a comment on the Ystrad Primary School field. I think, as most people are aware, within the next year, the car park at the back of Ystrad Hospital is going to be used, and the proposals are there from Welsh Government is to actually put a road taking up a third of that field. So it'll be very short-lived, whatever's done there, because that has already been earmarked by Welsh Government for access to the railway station. So that's another part of green spaces that's going to be lost. Thank you.
Would any officer like to come back on that?
No, I doubt it.
Can I come back and say in relation to Trinity Field, to Ystrad Primary School? Ystrad Primary School use the facility for sports days, etc. It's a council-owned field that is available for the school use.
Yeah, and I'm also aware that Broafter use that field as well. Yes. Okay. Can I just ask then if can I just have clarification actually whether we're going to the recommendation for each school individually, or are we moving on to the report about Cwm Gwyddon?
Each proposal is separate. They'd have to be given separate consideration.
Chair, can I just interject here? On page 34, as you rightly point out, the recommendation is members are asked to A, consider the information contained in both consultation reports, and B, endorse the recommendations to Cabinet to proceed to statutory notice in relation to both proposals. And that's on page 34, and that's actually the recommendation in the report. So my recommendation is that we have the second presentation and then have the vote on both proposals as outlined in the report. Or if you wanted to split the recommendations, and that would need a motion without notice from a member, which would be proposed, seconded, and then we could put that to the vote, if that makes sense.
Right. Can I ask, is there somebody willing to put a motion of notice in for this?
I will, Teresa. Councillor Freeman-Childs.
Thank you very much. And could I have a seconder for that, please?
You've got one. It's me.
Thank you very much, Councillor John Roberts. And Mark Jakes, could you go on to, well, just to endorse the recommendations now, and could you
Yes, Chair. Yes, Chair. So the motion put forward, proposed by Councillor Freeman-Childs and seconded by Councillor Roberts, is members are asked to consider the information contained in the consultation report, B, endorse the recommendations to Cabinet to proceed to statutory notice in relation to the Trinity Fields School. That is the motion. So if I put that to the vote now, Councillor.
Excuse me, Chair. I've had my hand up. There was a request to ask this to be deferred. That hasn't been, that hasn't been put to anybody yet. When the speaker spoke from Turley's, it was asked, could it be deferred? So I'm asking as a councillor, could we defer the recommendation of the one, of Estramanac for further consultation and further discussion? Because I believe that members should have an open and transparent view of actually what's going on here, given that, as I said, Cabinet yesterday endorsed a green strategy where they wouldn't build on green sites. That was a policy. Now, I don't want to see any more money wasted by any department, so I'd like it deferred until this is taken, until these things are discussed, because of the policy that came in yesterday.
Chair, am I able to speak?
Yes, you are.
Can I say that that would be a planning stage? This is only to obtain views of members to take to Cabinet for approval to proceed to statutory notice. This isn't planning. This is only for the proposal to get to that stage. So the new policy that Councillor James and Councillor Roberts are making reference to would have to be given due consideration at that stage, not now.
Thank you. So yes, we can proceed to the vote then. Mark, please.
Okay, then. Thank you, Chair. So just to remind members, the vote is members are asked to consider the information contained in the consultation report, A, and B, endorse the recommendation, to Cabinet to proceed to statutory notice in relation to the Trinity Fields School proposal. So I put that now to the committee. Councillor Aldworth, could you answer for, against, or abstain?
For.
Councillor Andrews?
For.
Councillor Bevan?
For.
Councillor Collis? For. Councillor Cuss?
For.
Councillor David?
For.
Councillor Freeman-Childs?
For.
Councillor Havard?
For.
Councillor James?
I'll abstain.
Councillor Miles?
For.
Councillor Parry?
For.
Councillor Roberts?
In a matter, I'm abstaining.
Mr. Weston?
For.
Mrs. Millington?
For.
And Mr. James?
For.
That's carried, Chair, so that's 13-4 with 2 abstentions.
Thank you very much. If we could go to the Next item, that is the Cwm Gwyddon School, please. Could I ask Andrea West?
Sorry, Chair, I thought he was I thought we were doing the EAS next, sorry.
Right.
Can you just clarify? Sorry, I was...
Right.
I can do the Cwm Gwyddon report now if you wish me to do so.
Sorry, Chair. Could I offer a view? I know
Yes.
we've had a kind of last minute reordering of the agenda, but we do have colleagues from the EAS who are with us, and I know their time is limited as well. So if members are amenable, could we take the EAS report at this stage and then come back to Cwm Gwyddon? Apologies, Chair. I hope that's okay.
No, that's perfectly all right. And after Andrea probably needs a glass of water after the last one anyway. So yes, if I could ask Ed then to go on to the next agenda, please. And that is, thank you very much, Ed Price.
Thank you, Ed. To take you through this report, this builds on a workshop we held at the beginning of November, where I took quite a few members that I've seen in the meeting through some of the changes this year and the significant difficulties of reporting this year. There were significant changes to the way that data was collected. When I look at the summary on 2.1, from foundation phase, Key Stage 2, Key Stage 3, no data collected at all because the learners were not in school ultimately, and schools would have just made estimates that would have not been meaningful. That doesn't mean that schools have stopped tracking the performance of pupils and made judgments for the benefit of the learner, but in terms of accountability date purposes, they are not there. Similarly, at Key Stage 4, Key Stage 5, that was internal assessments, centre assessed grades, which I've covered in the briefing, but I will give you a little more detail on the changes there. So on 2.2, the content of this scrutiny report is to provide a contextual view of anonymised school outcomes that were provided to the local authority on results day and the week after on a voluntary basis. One other update to that 2.2 since the writing of the report is that Welsh Government do not intend to provide any updates or checking of this data because there is no process to do so. So normally we would not have the final version of this report until January. Those updates will not be available from Welsh Government because they are not reporting the data. What's clear on 2.3 of the summary is that grades did increase quite significantly, and I'll exemplify that with a couple of charts. When I say that, that's both nationally, regionally, and within Caerphilly as well, when we look at an overall picture of the schools, but we can't accurately aggregate the data up because it is school reported and not checked. So the recommendations, no recommendations. When I look at the report, I will cover key aspects because of time. Foundation phase, Key Stage 5.2, foundation phase, Key Stage 2, Key Stage 3, no data available. Ultimately, it's a very brief comment from me on that. 5.3 at Key Stage 4, Key Stage 5, there is some data available, which I will cover briefly, but it is anonymised, and it was with the agreement of head teachers that they would report it because the statutory requirement for them to report it was removed, but all schools reported data to the local authority. The national context, I think it's important here to realise that it was based on centre assessed grades by the schools, and of what was of paramount importance in the summer, you'll all recognise, was the right grades for learners that did not hamper their progress onto the next stages of education. So from GCSE into tertiary, and then from A-level and other qualifications into colleges, that was what was of paramount importance. 5.5, I have included some graphs just for context so that you can see the relatively steady picture at grade C and above for 10 previous years. This is national now, but then you'll see the significant increase when you looked at the centre assessed grades or the model that Welsh Government had to moderate those grades. In the end, Welsh Government made the decision to go with the best of those grades, which did result in significant increases, but was the right thing, I think most people recognise, for learners at that time. It does make, for accountability purposes, that data even more difficult to come up with any meaningful analysis of it because they were the school grades and doing the right things for learners. When you look at 5.6 and the example for A level, it is more extreme. The number of A levels awarded at A star actually doubled last year compared with what the normal trend that we would see, and at A star and A it virtually doubled as well, to put things into context. So on 5.8, back to foundation phase, key stage 2, key stage 3, no data. Key stage 4, we do have data on the 5 measures, but we can't compare with those with the measure anything national that's been published, because those measures aren't published nationally, because it's just a summary of pass rates at GCSE which aren't comparable. They don't include all the vocational. What I've included on 5.10 is an anonymised summary of schools across the region compared with the highest, median and lowest across the region, because if we don't have the national data, rest assured that the local authority and supported by colleagues, the colleagues in the EAS, are still using that data to enter dialogue with schools, particularly at schools causing concern meetings, school development plan meetings, which are continuing, and it doesn't mean that we are stopping supporting schools and using this data appropriately in a supportive way to see where there are gaps, and to see where the school believe that there are gaps and could be improvements and the right support that's needed. So we are using that data, but it has been anonymised for the purposes of accountability. You've got the data at overall performance level. You've got the data on 5.10 second table, which is the free school meal learners. So we're looking at free school meal learners as well, and the disadvantaged, and using that with schools. You've also got the data at key stage 5. The reason for those gaps is because on those Welsh back skills challenge certificate measures and the overall Welsh back, not all schools reported that data. And given the current climate, because it was on a voluntary basis, we have not deliberately, the local authority have not chased school leaders for that subsidiary data at this stage. So the conclusion is that the intention is not to, I know this seems strange in a scrutiny committee, but for school purposes this year, not to use this for accountability, but to reassure members that the local authority and the EAS will use this data in dialogue with school leaders to support them in moving forward during these difficult times. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Ed. Thank you. We do have some questions for you. The first question coming from Councillor Brenda Miles.
Thank you, Chair. I think, Ed, you sort of touched on my question, which really was around the fact that we've got few statistics to base any judgments on this year. And it looks like we may be in this position again next year, as there'll be no exams, or maybe things will be slightly better next year. But my question really was around how do we go forward from this in our aim, our strategy to improve educational attainment, when we don't really have at our disposal this important element, which is data. You kind of touched on the fact and reassured us that you are still working with individual schools because you've got some information, but I don't know if you've got anything to add to that as to how we can prioritise, strategise.
I would.
Given where we are.
I would agree. There are other things that are suspended as well in terms of national categorisation. Is a process that did not take place this autumn as it normally would. Estin is also postponed for a year as well. So it's not just the data. There's a range of things that are not there at the moment. Some planned because it would be inappropriate to put those pressures on schools at this stage. In terms of measuring, you're right as well. In 2021, the ministers made announcements, but there is a head teacher strategy group looking at how the data will look in 2021, and it will be a mix of, it will be in-school assessment, but in a much more managed way. We do not yet know what that will look like, but we will work with colleagues in all the local authorities to see what can be provided. I would say moving forward that the important information for you to consider is the information that perhaps emerges from the schools causing concern process, that can be summarised so you know the information from the local authority that there are schools that may be causing concern, particularly in the secondary phase, and hopefully you could could use that information, which we contribute into the local authority as well. There is information on the use of grant funding as well, and how those plans are in place. The ALP funding, which you may have heard of, the Accelerated Learning Programme funding. How is that being used effectively for catch up with the learners? So you're going to get, I would say that it's seeking much more information on the inputs at this stage to what schools are doing with learners, and the outputs may have to be delayed in terms of assessing those.
Thank you for that.
I think Kerry Cole would like to come in also.
Evening, Chair. Just to add to what Ed said, I think it's clear that it's more complicated now to track the performance and success or difficulty schools are experiencing. It's much more difficult when you haven't got numbers. But numbers are only part of that story, and we've always in Scrutiny looked at the stories behind that data. What we will be doing, because there is a hiatus, in fact, many scrutiny committees are not receiving a report at all for that very reason. We were really determined that you should have that explanation, and that's why we built in the seminar for you too. What we will do is in the summer term, I believe, is scheduled for a schools causing concern report, where we can talk you through what's happened during this year, because whilst Eston have suspended their activity, what they haven't suspended is revisits to schools which are in categories. We have several schools in follow-up categories, and they will have a visit from Eston in this academic year in all likelihood, and there will be a result from that. So, you know, we'll definitely be able to talk to you about that. I think we will also, the Cabinet member will be involved in meetings with those schools who in the past have caused concern, but we will continue to identify those schools, not from inspection outcomes, not from data, but from our local intelligence and work through AIS. So those schools will continue to be identified and supported to improve. What I would say is you know, it's ever been thus that we have actually identified more schools through that process than through a data process. So for us, you know, that intelligent knowledge about our schools is still the most important thing. Even through COVID, you know, we've identified schools that have required support with leadership and management. And our focus continues to be on strengthening and improving leadership and management at all levels. And we don't really require the data to be able to identify that. And I would end by saying it's been a really positive picture over the last year in so many ways for our schools. We have, you know, many new appointments, and we've seen some fantastic responses, again, particularly through this COVID experience. So I'm sure there'll be a lot more to share with you going forward, but I can completely understand you wouldn't be alone in feeling perplexed at the moment about what you're going to be expecting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kerry. If there are no further questions, thank you very much indeed, Ed, for the report. And as it has no recommendations, I suggest that we go back to the 21st century schools for the consultation report on Cwm Gwyddon.
Thank you. Can I call upon my assistant again to display the presentation, please?
Certainly.
I hope he's better this time.
I was going to say glamorous, but I thought I better not.
No. That's what I love about these challenges, members. A chance to demonstrate my technical prowess or lack thereof. How's that?
That's lovely. Thank you. So this is a separate proposal to the Trinity Fields, as I mentioned earlier. So this proposal is in relation to Ysgol Gymraeg Cwm Gwyddon. Next slide. Okay. Again, exactly the same as we've done in relation to the Trinity Fields proposal. The legislation that governs us is the School Organisation Code, which comes about through the School Standards and Organisation Act 2013, and it's produced by the Welsh Government. In relation to Cwm Gwyddon, I believe it's section 42 of the Act that we have to make reference to. And again, Cwm Gwyddon falls under regulated alteration to a maintained school. So whereas Trinity was an alteration to a special, this is a maintained school. And the code, as I said, sets out the general principles that we have to follow in relation to what we have to produce. And again, in relation to this proposal, there'll be a separate planning process that will be carried out by Property Services. So the consultation process, again, is exactly the same as I've mentioned earlier. These are the steps that we have to take in accordance with Welsh Government statutory legislation. And at this stage now, we are at point 8. We've gone through all the others and we've actually produced a report up to point 7, which you as members would have received a copy of. And what we're actually asking tonight is endorsement, so we can take the report to Cabinet for approval to proceed to statutory notice. Again, that statutory notice will run for a period of 28 days. Because of the date of the 9th of December, we'll be looking again in line with the other one to produce it from the beginning of January. We'll then bring another objection or support, whichever is in favour of, to members again, and then another report to Cabinet, back to Welsh Government then with a full business case for approval to implement. And this one has the same timeline in relation to Trinity, and it will actually be open for pupils. We're anticipating for September 2023. Next slide, please. Again, we are required to summarise any responses given to us by consultees. We have to provide any means of clarification in relation to the various areas. We have to provide Eston's response in full, which is contained within the consultation report, and obviously our response in relation to Eston's views. That again is outlined in the school organisation code. Make recommendations then on how we wish to proceed, and in relation to this one we are asking for approval to proceed for the proposal to go ahead. We've also incorporated the views of the young pupils, and we'll actually discuss that again when the next slide comes up. Okay, so what are we actually proposing to do? We're actually proposing to relocate Ysgol Gymraeg Cwm Gwyddon to a new purpose-built Welsh medium school situated on the former Cwmcarn High site. Again, as I mentioned earlier, with occupancy from September 2023. As well as the purpose-built school, we are looking to incorporate childcare, special resource space, nursery, provision for rising threes. There'll be main classrooms, a main assembly hall, food technology space, a library and an IT space. And obviously, this will be a community facility that will be available for community use going forward. And if members recall, we played the video in the last presentation we made to you in respect to this proposal. You actually see the Chair of Governors talking about a Welsh class that he attends, and he's quite excited for that to be able to expand moving forward. Same consultation period started on the 14th of September and it closed on midnight on the 26th of October. This is the sort of, again, bird's eye view in relation to the plan. If you can acknowledge that we've actually built this to allow for a larger footprint later on should it be required. In order to meet the requirements of Welsh Government, the WESP, the Welsh and Education Strategic Plan, Welsh Government would like 1 million Welsh speakers by 2050. And obviously, given the fact as an authority, we've significantly invested in a number of Welsh medium primary schools from the Welsh Medium Grant, plus this expansion of provision for Cwm Gwyddon, there's an expectation that it's likely that the secondary provision will need to grow subject to demand. So the site has been specifically designed, so if we need to put a secondary school there on the site in future, it would allow us to do so. And the sort of big turquoise sort of area, if the secondary provision is put on site, that would be obviously where we'd look to put another 3G pitch as part of the proposal. But that would be part of Band C. It's not proposed as part of Band B at the moment. So this gives you another sort of angle in relation to the school. And I think the main bit coming out would be for the childcare element, and then the main body of the school is the long leg going down. In this one, a smaller level of responses. We had 388 responses. Quite disappointing in relation to the responses from the medium of Welsh. We had 340 responses in English and only 48 returned in Welsh. And we've broken it down again using the online survey, 212, 173 received via email and 4 responses received via post. Then obviously in relation to question 1, broken down into how people actually identified them within the categories. And it's interesting in respect of this actual proposal, we had a very high percentage of returns from pupils. As you can see, 53% of pupils were able to respond and say that they wish this proposal to go ahead. And we'll evidence that now in further slides. So it's actually breaking it down then into the pie chart, showing you that 95% of the people who responded actually support the proposal. 3% did not support, 2% did not feel strongly one way or the other, and the other one, well, 0, I think it was 0.2%, but obviously when you break it down like this, it doesn't show, actually made no comments, so they weren't concerned one way or the other. And again, breaking it down in relation to areas of how the people who didn't support the proposal, 85% were other. So obviously on that basis, we're most probably talking about local residents and members, etc. But then we've broken it down on the other side, showing you, as I just mentioned, 54% of the pie chart, which is a large percentage, were pupils of the school. The pupil voice. It's really important that we sort of emphasise on the pupil voice, and if this proposal goes ahead, it is a requirement from Welsh Government that a year after occupancy we would go back and actually revisit and see if we actually delivered what we promised. So the pupil voice plays, as I said, not only apart from the offset, but it's ongoing and it's something the Welsh Government like us to report on. So as I said, the pupils play an active role in influencing this, and it's really important to see, they're actually engaging in it. We actually produced a child-friendly version of the consultation document, and we've actually produced a child-friendly version of the consultation report. But obviously because of COVID, the school council and the classes are actually being sort of discussed through the actual teachers. I suppose normally as officers we would like to engage with them, but it's actually being done through the actual lesson sort of timetable. Again, exactly the same as we did in relation to Trinity. Using word cloud, we looked at the responses we received from the pupils and how many times certain words were actually used. And I think the important one here is coming out very strongly is school, and I think the other one is new. So you can see the pupils are excited moving forward to actually receive a new school. Right, again, as I said earlier, we are required by the School Organisation Code to do a summary of each of the items raised by the consultees, breaking them down into 3 areas: general themes, areas of concern and areas of agreement. This will assist Cabinet, as I said, in making the decision to go forward. And also Cabinet will be able to see all the responses in the format that they were received in order for transparency, so they can make an informed decision. Okay, general themes that emerged from this consultation. Acknowledgement in relation to the current Ysgol Gymraeg Cwm Gwyddon site, which is restricted. It's developed to its full potential and has outgrown its site. And I think if members can recall, when I actually presented to them in September in relation to this proposal, when we actually went there as officers, I think we were quite sort of surprised or shocked, for want of a better word, when the head actually made us aware that the hall in the school doesn't actually hold a full PE lesson. Only half of the children can actually be taught PE in the hall. They can't hold a full school assembly. They couldn't hold a Christmas concert there. So the school is required to actually go out and hire facilities. So it obviously is an additional cost to the school, but it's also not conducive to the level of education being delivered. So I think that's really exciting for them moving forward. It also says that it supports the increasing demand for Welsh medium provision in the area, which again supports our Welsh and Education Strategic Plan and also supports the requirements of Welsh Government for 1 million Welsh speakers by 2050. So, I think this has been seen as an exciting opportunity to actually grow Welsh medium in that particular area. There are concerns over the proposed use of a large site for a primary school, but as I mentioned, there are proposals, if it's required, under Band C to actually expand that and put a secondary Welsh medium provision on site. There were concerns then over safety and traffic management at the current site and the proposed site. And I think the current site is important to say, when parents actually take their children onto Ysgol Gymraeg Cwm Gwyddon currently, they have to walk past 2 pubs. There's no facility for them to drop the children off safely. They have to sort of park quite a way away and walk the children there. And that is quite concerning for us. But this actual provision, where people are concerned over the safety and traffic management, again, this will be subject to a full planning process. There was concerns over the impact of English medium primary schools in the area. In the consultation document, we actually brought to members' attention the schools that we thought could be impacted by this proposal. The closest ones are Abercarn, Cwm Carn and Waun Fawr. And I think it's important to sort of say that there is overall capacity within those schools. Just looking at them earlier, the capacity of Cwm Carn Primary, for example, there's 261 places there, and through projections between now and 5 years from now, the largest number will be 227. So you can see there's adequate capacity within Cwm Carn to accommodate the growing demand going forward. And I think it's important to actually sort of emphasise that when we open this school, the school will have the capacity for 420 pupils. But when we initially open it, we're planning to open it for 365. And then what we will actually do, we'll actually grow it incrementally by 5 per year group, 5 per year group until it reaches its full capacity. So that will then protect those English schools and make sure that we don't have children hemorrhaging out to a new school site. So we are, very conscious of how we actually grow this proposal, but it is vital within the area. And then another preference was the utilisation of the site for a new English medium comprehensive school. That isn't required. We've demonstrated within the report that there's adequate provision within Newbridge and Risca to accommodate the demand growing forward. And I think one of the things I need to really emphasise is that Newbridge School actually take a very high percentage of not only out of catchment but out of authority pupils. So from the catchment perspective, those schools are adequate to meet demand. I think in relation to Newbridge as well, we've also, from a 21st Century Schools Band A perspective, invested £2 million into that site with the addition of 9 classrooms, toilets and a lift. So we have made a significant investment there. So I've obviously to lose that, it could be very detrimental. In relation then to why we've analysed the consultation response comments that we have, we've got a number of areas. Use for identified proposed relocation site, that was mentioned, the size of the site and why primary provision. I think I just addressed that earlier, but obviously I'll go into it in detail moving forward. Secondary provision, a new Welsh medium build, demand for English medium, as I mentioned, in relation to Risca and Newbridge, there's adequate capacity. Another one then was investment in schools. It was recognised that we need to invest in the English medium schools in the area. And we have a capital programme within the authority that you're aware of, and obviously those schools are invested in as part of that process. So I think it's important for members to recognise that whilst we're putting this proposal forward, we are conscious of the needs of the English medium schools, and in an ideal world we'd like to give every facility a brand new site, but ongoing obviously we identify them subject to demand, need, etc. And again, there was 6 mentions in relation to traffic management, the transportation of the pupils and the increased traffic at the proposed site. I think it's important in relation to the transport of pupils. I actually did an analysis yesterday and I think there's 85 pupils currently being transported to the Cwm Gwyddon site at present. The catchment area isn't due to change, so we're not anticipating that there would be a massive increase in that. I think it would be, on a percentage basis, quite low as the school grows. Increased traffic flow, I think we could argue against that because that site has already been a secondary school site. So I think that one, we're actually proposing at this stage a primary school, so there'd be lower numbers. And with regards to access and parking, access again would be considered as part of the planning process. And as I showed you from the slides moving forward, the parking facilities will be enhanced at this school and parents will have the opportunity to drop the children off in a safe environment. Use of identified proposed location sites. As I mentioned earlier, we feel that Ysgol Gymraeg Cwm Gwyddon has reached its full potential. I mean, if you went there and seen the dining hall hasn't got the capacity to accommodate a large number of children. A lot of children eat their sandwiches in a classroom or in the small hall. So we recognise that whilst this is an excellent school and it's had 5 excellence as part of the Estin inspection, we've reached its full potential and it does need to have a new site moving forward. Again, we've addressing the needs of the growing demand for Welsh medium primary provision and aim to address this as part of this issue. The planned footprint of the new primary will also allow for future expansion. I've addressed that, and I think that's something we need to recognise as part of this proposal. Secondary provision, as I touched on briefly, we are dedicated to providing education facilities for all our pupils in the local communities. And in an ideal world, as I said, it would be fantastic to give brand new schools to everybody. We have invested significantly, as I said, £2 million into Newbridge as part of the Band A programme. And what I've done here, I've actually shown you the capacity of the 2 secondary schools, the number of pupils currently on roll, the percentage of catchment pupils, and if you can see what the one it says percentage of catchment pupils for Newbridge, it's only 65.59% of catchment pupils, and there's actually 16.95% of out of county. So, you know, that demonstrates there is adequate provision within these 2 secondary schools to meet the demand of catchment pupils. Okay, investments in schools. The council is dedicated to providing all learners with quality learning opportunities. Obviously, as I said, you know, there is significant investment through the capital programme, and we've also had a capital maintenance grant over the last 2 years from Welsh Government as well, which has been invested heavily into schools, addressing things like new roofs, boilers, etc. The cost of a boiler in a new school is astronomical, so I think it's important just to recognise that. We also have regular sort of reviews in relation to our sort of condition survey, so we address the backlog maintenance that way. This one has been prioritised because its current location has reached its full capacity, and as I said, we're protecting the demand for English medium schools the way we're proposing it moving forward. Traffic management, I think I've touched on this. It is important to stress the needs of the Learner Travel Wales Measure 2008. That does address the travel requirements, but I think we're confident that even although this school is due to expand, there won't be a major increase in transporting the children back and forth, and again is subject to planning process as well. Then the areas of wide disagreement. I think a lot 257 recognise that the school has met its full capacity, that we've developed that site to its maximum. Even though whilst it recognises the excellent standard of education being delivered there, I think people feel that this could be enhanced moving forward by a new facility. The site accessibility, which I've mentioned, and I've mentioned the parking and drop-off. The growing demand for Welsh medium education, there was 90 mentions here, and I think it obviously is, again, we just need to be mindful of the Welsh Education Strategic Plan, and again, parental choice. The demand for Welsh medium provision is growing, and we need to recognise that and expand it going forward. The need for additional facilities. As I mentioned, the school hasn't got the option to be able to offer a lot of this at the moment, so it's enhancing the outdoor facilities and the health and well-being of the education, and again, emphasising the larger use for the community. Again, the same sort of thing as we produced previously, showing you an indicative timescale. Obviously, this is subject, as I said, to a lot of aspects such as planning, etc. But this is a rough indication of how we envisage the timescales moving forward. We're looking for the school to open from September 2023. And then we're asking members to consider the information contained within the consultation report, which we've all had a copy of, and we're asking members to endorse the recommendations to Cabinet to proceed to statutory notice in relation to this individual proposal. As I said, this is only the views of the consultees. This isn't anything in relation to the final process. There are a lot of obstacles we need to get over, and obviously, you know, we'll bring it back to you each time just to give you an update and take you through the journey with us as things develop. Thank you. That's the end of my presentation.
You're muted, Chair. Chair, you're on mute. You're muted. Your microphone's muted.
I do apologise. I was just saying thank you very much to Andrea for the two presentations that we've had. Thank you very much indeed. We do have two questions for you though, one from Councillor Brenda Miles and one from Councillor Derek Havard. If Brenda Miles could go first, please.
Yeah, can you come back to me? I can't remember what my question was, and I just have to check my notes again. Sorry.
Okay. Councillor Derek Havard.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to draw attention to the email that we've all received from the two local members. And they mention here that last year a petition to the local authority was submitted from the residents of Cwmcarn by the residents opposing the preferred option of placing a new Welsh medium facility on the site of Cwmcarn High School. Now, first of all, I want to say that both these members were very good friends of mine and I appreciate their input, but they've known about this for an awful long time and it seems a bit late to be coming here now, but at least, you know, you've got to listen to their point of view. But there was no mention from Andrea of this petition in the consultation process. I wonder what happened to it. Thank you.
Can I respond, Chair? Yes.
Of course you can.
Councillor Hartford, just to let you know, that was outside the time scale. The consultation period is stipulated in the school organisation code. It has to be for 42 days. And I can confirm that both of these councillors actually provided a joint response in relation even though they supported the proposal, they felt that we could put English and Welsh medium on site, and I think I addressed the concerns within part of the presentation.
Yeah, thanks, Andrea. But what I wanted, you didn't mention the petition. Did you?
We wouldn't, because we wouldn't be able to take it into account because it was last year. It wasn't part of the consultation process. They didn't submit it within the 42 days. They submitted it before the proposal ever came to fruition.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you. Mr. Gerwin James.
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's a two-part question in regards to the SRB. First of all, is how much provision are there at the moment for special resource base in the Welsh medium? And the second part, how will Ysgol Gymraeg Cwmgwyddon help with the special resource if with possible growing need?
Chair, can I ask Sarah Ellis to respond in relation to that one, please?
Certainly.
Sorry, I do apologise. Yes, so we have provision at primary level for children with complex needs through the medium of Welsh. This would expand our provision in that area, allowing us to develop the provision that we have to meet the needs of Welsh speakers at primary level.
Thank you, Sarah. Are you happy with the response, Mr. James?
Yeah, just basically, is there actual need for further provisions at the moment, or will there be need in the future with the growing number of Welsh speakers coming to the schools?
So in accordance with the ALN Act, we have a responsibility and a duty as a local authority to review provision to ensure that we have suitable provision to meet any identified needs. Part of that, you know, what we have to think about is forward planning, and we've obviously talked about that quite a lot this evening already. So being able to ensure that there is provision available for the identified needs of children and young people going forward. So this, you know, this would be part of that that endeavour, and to ensure that we meet the requirements of the ALN Act.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Farina Childs.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, Andrea, only a quick question. When we looked at Trinity Fields, flooding was mentioned. There was a feasibility report done by the NRW on this site because I think it's close to a floodplain.
That would be covered off as part of the planning process. Obviously, it wouldn't be something we could look at. I don't know, is Julian still here or is Julian gone? Julian Harding would be the best person to actually. Oh, Julian is here. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, we have looked at it initially. The floodplain is actually on the lower football pitch. It doesn't affect the school site. This will obviously be investigated in more detail as the planning process develops, but we haven't got any concerns with it at the moment, and neither have Caerphilly Drainage.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I ask Councillor Derek Harvard, have you got a supplementary question there? Or is your hand up? Your hand is up.
Sorry, Chair, it shouldn't be up.
No problem. Councillor Brenda Miles, did you recall any questions that you wanted to ask?
No, I checked my notes. I haven't written anything down, so I'm fine, thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Well, the recommendation is on page 34. It has changed slightly now because we're just doing it for the Cwm Gwyddon school. So we'll go back to Mark Jakes, who will give us the wording correctly for us.
Thank you, Chair. So as you rightly point out, we are splitting the recommendation, which is on page 34 of the report. So we'd need someone to propose the motion without notice and a seconder, and then I can put it to the vote. And so the motion would be members are asked to consider the information contained in the consultation report, that was A, and B, endorse the recommendations to Cabinet to proceed to statutory notice in relation to the Ysgol Gymraeg Cwm Gwyddon proposal. So if there's somebody I could ask to propose that motion.
Chair, I'll move that. And could I say, in doing so, there was one remark that Andrea made with regard to the number of parents responding to the medium of Welsh. Unfortunately, the majority of parents, unfortunately, are, like me, not Welsh speaking. That could be the reason why there wasn't many Welsh response.
Okay.
I move in here.
Thank you, Councillor Bevan. So that's the motion's been proposed by Councillor Phil Bevan. Can I have a seconder, please?
Yes,
second. Dwi'n eilio.
Oh, there we are.
Sorry, who was that seconding, please?
I'll take back.
Dwi'n eilio. I'll second. John Roberts.
Thank you very much, Councillor Roberts. So the motion is members are asked to A, consider the information contained in the consultation report, and B, endorse the recommendation to Cabinet to proceed to statutory notice in relation to the Ysgol Gymraeg Cwm Gwyddon proposal. If I now put this to the vote, Councillor Aldworth.
For.
Councillor Andrews.
For.
Councillor Bevan.
For.
Councillor Collis. Councillor Collis. Councillor Cuss.
For.
Councillor David.
For.
Councillor Farina Childs.
For.
Councillor Havard.
For.
Councillor James. Councillor James. Councillor Miles.
For.
Councillor Parry.
For.
Councillor Roberts.
We applied. I'm for. Thank you.
Mr. Weston.
For.
Mrs. Millington.
For.
And Mr. James.
For.
That's carried, Chair, unanimously, no abstentions and no against.
Oh, that's lovely. Thank you very much. Well, thank you members and officers for all your attendance this evening. Diolch yn fawr iawn. Like I said, many thanks to Andrea for those lengthy consultation reports. And also my big thanks to Mark Jakes, who facilitated the roll call vote for us all evening. So thank you very much.